Redo it. Stop by one of the newly renovated showrooms in Hernando or Wildwood, or call today 237-2888. That's 237-2888.
Mike Scott.
All right, thank you. 8 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. My son runs a lot. He likes to participate in some of these fun runs, where maybe you're running through mud or maybe you're running through colored powder or different obstacles. And Robin's daughter has also done the same thing. And when I've gone to any of these events to videotape, take pictures, whatever, I find myself, I'm going to say you do, but I find myself standing among all of these, I'm going to say young people, and they mostly are young, at least compared to me, but not all. And in fact, it was a wall that the competitors had to climb over that had a wall and a rope, kind of a contraption thing. And it did not look easy. It did not look easy to do. So you find yourself standing with people who have made a commitment to be fit. And and I'm not that fit, So you look around and say, gosh, if I hung out with these people, if I was around these people all the time, I bet you I would have no problem turning away that Twinkie, right? Yeah, she is there. She is there. I have her on the phone. Dr. Malissa Wood is on the phone. She is a clinical cardiologist and a staff physician at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. She's the co-director of the Corrigan Women's Health Program. She's an assistant professor of clinical medicine at Harvard Medical School. And boy, look at these credentials. The lead investigator of the Happy Heart Trial. Don't know what that is. Her book is called Thinfluence. And I'm not speaking with a lisp. That's what it's called, Thinfluence. The powerful and surprising effect that friends, family, work, and environment have on weight. And I think you don't want to blame people for your weight problem, right? But maybe you can blame them for your success. I don't know. Well, let's find out if that's what this is about. Dr. Malissa Wood. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you for being on the air with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And it is funny when you say Thinfluence, you sort of feel like something's wrong inside your mouth, but that's not true.
Yeah.
So your question is a good one, which is really kind of who's to blame, or do we actually give credit to those around us? And I think one of the first things that we thought about and I wrote this with Dr. Willett and Dan Childs, was that we wanted to take some of the guilt and some of the personal stigma and pain associated with making bad choices and where someone might be at point A, and take it away from them and kind of say, look, you didn't get here by yourself. You grew up in a home, and however your family ate, however they did or didn't exercise, that really imprinted upon you. And the life you led as a young adult, that imprinted upon you too, and the people you spent time with did. All that means is that those stamps are on you, but those are not permanent stamps. You can reframe and re-engineer your health, and that's really what we want to give you the steps to do in this book.
I love that. I have a quick story, and I hope the people who I won't name anybody, but the people in my own family. I have a nephew, and he and his wife adopted some children. And all three children were siblings, and they must have had something terrible happen in their biological parents. I don't really know the whole story. Whether they even know it or not, I don't know. But the point is, when they adopted the children, one of the three was a little bit chunky, a little bit chubby. And my niece, my nephew's wife, changed all that. I mean, she just changed her eating habits and changed everything, and they all got into shape physically. And this is several years now ago that this happened. But I think I witnessed what you're talking about.
It's interesting because I think for those of us that are parents, and have been children, which I guess all of us were at one point,
right.
we forget about that an amazing effect of what we see and how it affects us. And I remember growing up, my mom had one of those old Joan Walsh Anglin paintings on the wall, and it said, the quote was, "Children live what they learn, and learn what they live." Mm-hmm. And you do learn what you live, and what you do every day kind of affects you, even though people can tell you, do this, do that. It's what you live and what you experience that really does affect you. So I think those of us who do have children or aunts or nieces and nephews and children of friends that we mentor and role model, that's a golden opportunity for us to start those habits personally and then share them with young people. Because as we know, it's a little bit easier to change your habits when you're younger, but you can still do it even after the age of 75. I see it all the time. It just takes a little bit more work.
But if you're part of a family or part of a group, and we work at the mall. And so outside the window, you see families going in, and you can see, well, that family's heavy and that family's not. And it does seem to be in groups. It's kind of obvious. Or you see them all walking out of the mall. They've got a little bit of weight on them, and they're all sucking on a straw that they just got a soda somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. The liquid candy, as we call it, right?
Yeah. Right.
So how do you change yourself? I mean, you'll have to change your whole family, am I right?
The first thing is changing yourself and making it personal. And in our book, we actually, throughout every chapter, I came up with this concept because I believe if you're going to teach people things, you have to do it in a systematic way that works. And if you do that, you have a higher chance of actually successfully teaching. So I came up with this idea, which was the action plan. And every chapter really has it. And the first piece is analyze, which is look at your life and recognize, are there things you need to change? Could you add 8,000 steps to your walking a day by getting a pedometer and paying attention? Could you cut out 2 sugar beverages a day? Could you, decide at night that your family, instead of sitting in front of the TV and eating, voraciously, could you actually sit around a table and have conversation? These are things that you analyze in your life and say, I need to change these. And the next step is acting. It's making one change, being realistic, picking one thing that's high priority and doing it yourself. And then when you're able to do it successfully, then you start influencing other people. And I think that simple set of 1, 2, 3, analyze, act, influence, can work for every aspect of our health life that we experience, whether it's at home, whether it's with our family, whether it's with our friends that we socialize with on the weekends, coworkers. One of the things about work that's really shocking is, if you think about it, for most of us, we spend more time with our coworkers than we do with our family every week. And so those relationships and those, opportunities to help support each other's better health are often lost because we really don't recognize that strength around us. But we do realize that there is a very, very contagious effect of poor health choices, and things like diabetes and obesity clearly run, like you said, at the mall, people walking in, a family walking in together.
Right.
If your sister or brother is obese, you're much more likely to be obese, and the same goes for your best friend and your partner. So, recognizing that effect is important, but then recognizing you can turn it on its head, and if you make a positive choice, they are going to be somehow inoculated with that good choice, and you just have to make that effort to get that done.
And that's one of the main things that you're stressing in your book, because there are no bad guys here. We all have freedom of choice. We live in a capitalistic society. We have fast food restaurants. We have healthy restaurants. We have all these different choices to make. And it's not the fault of the retailers of what they're selling, because they really aren't to blame, because they're making their way in this world. It's all about the freedom that every individual has to choose how they want to live, what they want to eat, and how much they want to exercise. And you're really awakening that in people, that everybody should live side by side, but just make the choice that's right for you.
That's true. And I think, one of the things, there are so many choices, and we are so fortunate to live in a country where you can walk into a gigantic, one of the big, grocery store, box store type places, and have a million different choices in front of you. And that, I think, is sometimes overwhelming. And, one of the things that I also wanted to stress in this book when we talk about eating, and I think sometimes people might open it and say, well, this book isn't a diet book. I thought I was getting a diet book. This is not.
Right.
And it's actually the diet for your whole life is what it is. And that's why I try to tell people, going on a diet suggests that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you do it for a period of time, and then you're done with it, and then you go back to what you were before. And that typically doesn't work. The thing that works and allows it to stick with you is by eating the right things for the rest of your life most of the time, and I want to emphasize that. It doesn't mean that you can't still have that special thing that you love, or, go out for a birthday or a special occasion. But it just means, the bucket of M&Ms in the office on the desk that everybody goes by and takes a handful of, figuring that if you didn't buy them, there are no calories, that might be something that you need to get rid of.
Or the other one, when you pay for a buffet and you say, well, I paid $6 for this, I better go back and get some more.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
I do that.
You know, when you go to a party like and there's all this food, I often think this: do we really need that much food? I mean, you're going to eat one sandwich, aren't you? I mean, shouldn't there be one sandwich per person out there?
Well, that's a good point that you bring up, because one of the things that I encounter when people read this or we talk about this is, how can I go to a party or an event if I'm actually really trying to make the right choices and not seem like a stick in the mud? And a perfect example is one of my friends who was doing a food challenge with a group from her gym, and she came to a birthday party, and she brought what she needed to eat, and she said, you know what, this is what I've made. It's got this and this and this in it. She brought extra, and she said, you guys are welcome to try it, but this is kind of what I have to do because I'm sticking with my plan. Because it was a short, she's like, I need to do this for like the week, whatever. And people started sampling it, and they were like, well, that's really good. And by the time, I don't know that she even got to eat any of it because everybody really enjoyed it. And it was something that she did that she wasn't like, well, I'm not going to eat what you guys are eating. That's bad for you. It was, I brought something that's really, really good for you, and it's really actually within the realm of what I'm supposed to be eating.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to try some? And I think it's a different attitude,
I love lettuce, tomatoes, and onions on a burger. And then I discovered, you know what? If I don't even have the burger, that's what's really the flavor is really coming from those three things. The lettuce. By the way, Doctor, I want to tell you something, just so you know this. And Donna Gould is your publicist, and we've worked with Donna for a long time. And we have lots of publicists actually that pitch us authors. A diet book rarely gets on the show in the month of May, first of all.
Well, thank you.
But I want to tell you, I want to explain why, and the listeners need to hear this because they will understand what this is about and why Robin and I are talking about this. In about December, we get a barrage, is that the right word? A barrage of opportunities to speak to book authors who've written about new diets, because January is the month, okay? And I have to be really, really picky about, because I don't want to have a whole month full of diet talk.
Yeah, very picky.
So I'm very picky. I'm very sure. I have to be very sure that it's a book that does maybe a different approach or a different angle. The reason why you're even on this show is because Donna was able to tell me that this is not a diet book. This is really a different mindset, and that's what resonated with me and Robin, and that's why. I mean, I love what you're saying, and I hope I just articulated it well enough so that the listeners know this is not the normal diet book you might hear us talking about in January.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, I appreciate that, and you definitely, Donna did a great job, representing it, because she does get it.
Yeah. The book is called Thinfluence, THIN, as in getting thin, fluence. The powerful and surprising effect friends, family, work, and environment have on weight. Do you know there was we had one of the Biggest Losers on, one of the winners of the Biggest Loser show. Mm-hmm. I can't remember his name.
Can't remember his name.
But he told us that the show, while it was his decision to do that and to lose the weight, it actually became contagious in his family. So he was kind of the catalyst that got his whole family to lose weight.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing, because I think when you realize the people in your family or the people in your close circle, you're there together for a reason, usually involving like respect, usually involving, really caring about that other person.
Yeah.
And when you see somebody making these changes and the positive effect it has, you want to drink that Kool-Aid too. And it really does become contagious. And I think that's then what's really exciting. And, at the beginning, when you mentioned, my name and some of the things I'd done, you mentioned the Happy Heart study. And that's actually sort of the nidus for some of my contributions in this book, and that was a study I did in the suburb of Revere in Massachusetts, outside of Boston, very blue-collar, low-income neighborhood, actually, quite low-income. And I went to this neighborhood where the women in the community have a lot of heart risk, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and it's a pretty hard-scrabble life there. And I said I want to take a health promotion program to people and base it on a system of community and of mutual support and education. And so we did that. We based it at one of the health centers, and many of these women were socially isolated, really struggling with a number of problems, and they met one another, And it was like they gained a system of a group of peers and support, and within 2 years, their heart disease risk scores dropped significantly, and they were able to sustain this because they had someone to talk to. So much of our choice that we make about bad health, like not eating the right things or not exercising, these choices are often driven by things in our life that make us feel stressed or anxious. And by actually disentangling that web and picking out some of those things and offering people solutions for some of the stressors in their lives, and giving them information and support, that's how you really can change behavior, even in individuals that have the hardest, the least likely chance of making the changes, because the changes are harder to do in some communities,
And by getting to the root of that you're not you're not advocating the extreme, because people will see events coming up like weddings or graduations, and they'll all of a sudden go on crash diets so they can fit into that dress or look the best they want to look. But you are really getting to the root of the problems and encouraging people just to take it step by step and to have a gradual lifestyle change.
That's right. And although the title is Thinfluence, I think it does kind of roll off the tongue, and it's certainly something people can remember. I really want to stress that certainly being too thin is as dangerous as being super overweight. And for me as a cardiologist, because I have to deal with the end stages of people making poor choices all of their lives, what I want to encourage more than thin is be a healthier version of yourself than you are now. Because thin people walk into my office every day needing heart stents. It's not just about what you weigh. It's about how you can be the healthiest you are. And actually right now in the United States, only 7% of Americans have ideal cardiovascular health. So, this is like paying attention to your blood pressure, your exercise, your diet, your weight, certainly, your cholesterol, not smoking, making sure your numbers are all good and that you're managing your stress and activities. And so I think by breaking it down into those areas and getting support from those around you, again, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's in the social circle, that will really help you make choices gradually over time that are sustainable.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just do a radio show, so I'm just taking a guess at this, but it sounds like it's a spiraling thing, either for the positive or the negative. If you're eating more of the bad foods, then you're going to gain weight and you're going to move around less, and it's going to be a domino or spiraling effect. And if you start eating better, you'll start moving around more. It spirals the other way.
It is, and although I'm a person who was trained to put stents in arteries, I'm a huge believer in each of us having the power within ourselves to heal our bodies, or at least really get them to the healthiest state they can be. And I think, these things, so many things like arthritis and cancer and heart disease and diabetes, they are sort of the end stage of, a lot of bad things building up in our bodies. And by taking control of it personally and saying, what, I recognize if I do this, I might actually give myself a long-term better bill of health. That's kind of empowering for people to feel like they have control over something.
Do you think the students today, whether they're in high school or college, do you think they have more of an interest in keeping themselves heart healthy?
I think it really depends on who they spend time with. I will tell you that I have 4 kids. 2 of them are in high school, and they are runners, and their group that they spend time with, those kids like to cook healthy food. They like to be outside, either running or biking. And that circle is really a nice circle of kids who get the message. They get that this is important. But I think there are equal circles that spend time driving around, drinking sodas, sitting at home playing video games all the time. Not saying my kids don't play video games, but it's not what they do all the time. And I think it's the circle that you're in. And I think that kids in general have gotten more exposure to health messaging, certainly. But I think that they still don't necessarily get it because, as with everything else, there's sort of this peer concern. And, I think in young women, one of the big peer concerns is actually weight and being too thin. Or the negative or the guilt associated with gaining a couple pounds or not looking great in this outfit. And I think really trying to build more healthy body images in kids from a young age is really important. And then, helping, kids that are teenagers recognize that there are a lot of things that contribute to health and not just what you weigh.
The book, again, is called Thinfluence, and Dr. Malissa Wood is our guest, and she's one of the authors. I guess we should mention that Dr. Walter Willett, Walter Willett, is another one of the authors, and Dan Childs is a contributor as well from Harvard Medical School. Is that right?
Yeah, Dan's actually at ABC News.
Oh, at ABC. Okay.
Yep. And Dr. Willett is at Harvard along with me.
So great group. But I wanted to mention that ABC is a great way to segue to the last thing I wanted to mention, is that in the group of people that are influencing us are also these people we don't really know, these people in the media. Mm-hmm. We have cultural icons and things like that, right?
Absolutely. I think we've had some amazing cultural icons that have been able to make health choices and changes, and because they are in the spotlight, everybody knows about it, and I think that's really important. And I think we've also had some really tragic public figures who had heart attacks at young ages, because they didn't listen to the messages, and I think that really strikes people. And, I think whenever we see either a really positive or a really sad or tragic event, people pay attention for a little bit of time and then they move on. And I think what we really need are continued, media events and support in the media of really allowing people to have access to information about, making those positive health choices and encouraging them. And I think, we actually devote a whole chapter in the book to the concept of your media diet and all of the things that we're bombarded with on a regular basis. And as with everything else in the book, I always emphasize moderation. I mean, I think a big thing that you see on TV now are these ads for exercise DVDs and tapes, and they have all these young, incredibly beautiful people, and it's like $98 and you can look like that. Well, it's $98 and working out an hour and a half a day and not eating much.
Doctor, thank you so much for being on the air with us today. Sure. Look up the book, Thinfluence, THINFLUENCE. Dr. Malissa Wood, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Take care, no problem. Thanks.
All right,
Bye-bye.
we will take a break. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio. I'm Chris Foster. President Obama meeting privately with Veterans Affairs Secretary Eric Shinseki in the Oval Office to talk about what's being done to speed up care at VA hospitals and allegations of delays being covered up.
I will not defend it because it is indefensible, but I can take responsibility for it. And I do.
Secretary Shinseki speaking to the Coalition for Homeless Veterans this morning in Washington.
We will use all authority at our disposal to enforce accountability among senior leaders who are found to have instigated or tolerated dishonorable or irresponsible scheduling practices at VA healthcare facilities.
He says he was too trusting of some employees and that senior officials at the Phoenix, Arizona VA have been removed. Consumer spending down last month for the first time in a year, 0.1%, according to the Commerce Department. Fox News, we report. You decide.
There is something about the road that beckons, that invites us to pack up the family and leave the world behind. And there is something about an industry-leading unlimited mileage warranty on a certified pre-owned Mercedes-Benz that gives us the freedom to do exactly that. You take to the highway, rack up the miles for up to 3 years, and drive with the assurance that your Mercedes-Benz is covered. You have the security of being in a car that has been certified to Mercedes-Benz standards, while you enjoy a carefree ownership experience for miles and miles. But while the